We have been talking about elections in Ghana, particularly 2012, and all the issues of violence and the questions that arise therefrom. Indeed, we have the biometric registration exercise ongoing currently in the country. We know it's for 40 days. The first round out of the 4 rounds has been done. We are in the second round right now, which is the next 10 days, that is. But we have had so many reports from Ashanti region, Tafo Pankrono in Accra, Ododio, and some other hot spots. And the question we are asking basically is that what is the role of the church in all of this in bringing some peace to the country? Of course, we know that efforts are being made by the Christians in this country and the leadership of it. But what kind of effect do we expect to get from there? I have some headlines here from Joy News TV. Reverend Palmer Buckle joins peace campaign ahead of December polls is one of them. It's a major attempt. Representatives of political parties are to ensure peaceful polls in here. We are talking about youth having to lead, but the role of the church is one that cannot be taken away. Of course, if you have studied some political philosophy and history, you know that whenever you talk about the state, the church has featured prominently in it throughout. And some say that even in Britain today, in modern dispensation, the role of the church cannot be questioned. What is the nature of the role of the church in Ghana, and how can it help us as we try to bring some peace to our country towards election 2012? In the studio with us tonight, we couldn't go higher, as big as it gets, the presiding bishop of the Methodist Church of Ghana, who would have been my bishop had I remained true to the Methodist faith to which we subscribe. And Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante is in the studio. I think I can call you my father.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be wrong. It's good to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm sure at a moment like this, on a Monday night like this, you'd be rather reflecting on matters, but somehow my producer wouldn't let you. She found a way to bring you to the studio.
I don't know how she managed to do that, but she succeeded in a way.
All right, so that's a good one. But really, we've been talking about electoral violence in Ghana recently, quite a bit, particularly with the biometric registration exercise. You say that this is a crunch election. Many have said, well, other elections in Ghana have been crunch elections, but they say this one is of a special significance, particularly because of the biometric registration exercise we are undertaking. And so we have seen violence. What would be the role of the church in trying to bring peace to our dear nation, Ghana?
Thank you very much, Nee. In the first place, I think it is important for us to understand that according to the population census, that's the latest that we have,
right,
Christians in this country are about 69%. So let me round it up and say about 70% of Ghanaians claim to be Christians. If 70% of Ghanaians claim to be Christians, then Christians have a very important role to play in terms of maintaining peace in respect of our elections.
right.
If indeed the 70% are truly Christians, are people who go to the various churches, then that is where we need to speak to them. And if you can get about 70% of the nation advocating
Right.
for peace, then obviously you know that we're going to have peace in this country.
Okay.
Because they can in turn affect the remaining 30%. So I believe that the church has a role to play in educating her members in respect of the need to observe the electoral laws and to maintain peace at all costs.
So when these news items about election violence or registration violence, etc., erupt, and some ask questions about what really the role of the church is, from where you sit, what goes through your mind, and what is it that you wish you could address them on? We've had programs right here on this show where somebody actually said, perhaps our pastors and our preachers should in the pulpit say, don't go this way or don't go that way because they are violent and all of that. And people are disagreed with that view at the same time and saying that, well, that would be amount to engaging in partisan politics and all of that. But when these things happen, and the 70% you say are supposed to be members of our church, does it mean that people listen to the word of the church on Sunday or Tuesday or whenever day they go, and then once they leave the church, they forget the principles they are supposed to live by?
Definitely, the fact that, we continue to experience violence and some other unpleasant things in the society,
Right.
there's every indication that a good number of the people who go to church listen to the messages, but they don't practice it. Because honestly, if either they listen to the message, they don't practice, or we don't tell them what they need to hear. But I do believe that it works both ways.
Right.
I think it is important for us to educate our people, as I've said, about the need to maintain peace.
Right.
Now, you were talking about somebody saying that, you know, we need to tell our people, go this way, don't go this way.
Right.
I have always insisted that we need to draw a clear distinction between national politics and partisan politics.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? National politics, you love your country. You want to see the country move forward. We believe in democracy. We are tolerant. And we say that majority carries the vote.
Okay.
So if the majority of the people elect any government, we are ready to support that person for the good of the country, not for the good of the party. When we are talking about partisan politics, that is where you, at any cost, you want your party to win, even if by hook or crook, with emphasis on crook. If that means that you're going to destroy the nation, you wouldn't care a hoot, because your concern is for your party to win. And I think as ministers and as ministers, we have the responsibility to engage in national politics, not partisan politics, to tell people to love Mother Ghana and do what is expected of us as Christians, you know, for the good of the country, rather than simply sticking to a political party. And even if that political party is not towing sort of a line that will enhance the good of the country,
right,
you by all means want to push it. I don't think we have to support that kind of thing.
The Ghana Pentecostal Charismatic Council is actually embarking on a campaign for peace. We know that there's so, and of course I've read Reverend Papa Mabako's campaign for peace,
yes,
where this item actually says, if I may, that the Metropolitan Archbishop of Accra, Most Reverend Charles Pamabako, has joined the increasing number of campaigns aimed at preaching peace ahead of the December polls with the launch of an elections education campaign poster aimed at fostering peace during and after the upcoming elections. And then he said, at the launch, he actually exhorted Ghanaians to be confident of success, since the country has already been to the polls 5 times since 1992, which has made the citizens very acquainted with the process. This is 15th March 2012, quite recently, where we have this news item. And of course, the Ghana Pentecostal Charismatic Council. Yes. Is there a particular reason why we really seem to up the tempo, so to speak, when we have a December in which we have general elections?
Well, you know that even before the registration, we were talking about whether or not we need biometric registration.
That's right.
The word biometric seems to conjure all sorts of things in the minds of people. It is as if there is a new guy on the block and everybody, it's either hesitant or people are agitated. They don't know what it is. Some people even went to the extent of saying, hey, you don't do that. If you did that, it's going to affect your health and so on and so forth.
That's true.
And so the parties, you know, tried as much as possible to hike up, to talk to people about the need to engage in that. This is the something that has arrived in the country that is going to help us really get a clean voters register that will enable us to express our democratic rights. Okay. So everybody wants to get there. And that will account, you know, for the sort of, you know, situation that we seem to be finding ourselves in.
Okay.
In addition to that, before we even talked about the registration, you know that the political heat in the country has been unprecedented. You know, we know, I have lived in this country for many years. I saw a little bit, even though I was a kid, of Nkrumah's time, of what we call the tension time in Kumasi, when people were actually throwing bottles and it was really violent. But I never really had a situation where people will insult one another.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, today, the media is also, has given access to so many people. People's voice could be heard. The little thing that is said somewhere in those days, if somebody said something, you wouldn't hear. Because, I mean, where is the media to carry those kinds of things?
That's true.
But you cough in your bedroom today, it's on air. And so these things are all creating that kind of, situation. As far as I'm concerned, there is no need for Ghanaians to worry too much about what is happening. Rightly, I mean, we are concerned for what is happening is right, because, I mean, we are peaceful people. Okay. We do not want to see these things happen. But I'm inclined to believe that what we observe in the first phase of this election, of the registration exercise, we will diminish, I mean, gradually.
Okay.
Because as people get to hear of the kinds of things that are happening, and besides, people are now trying to be vigilant. You remember, Dr. Afarijan himself said biometric will not solve your problem, but you have to be vigilant.
That's right.
And in trying to be vigilant, people have even forgotten about the laws. So they look at me and they say, hey, you don't look like a Ghan. So we're not going to allow you to register in Accra. You go to Kumasi, you don't look like an Ashanti. We're not going to allow you to do that. Over vigilance and not going by the laws is what seems to be creating the problem.
Okay.
Again, we should not also forget that there are miscreants in society. No matter what happens, you're going to have certain people who will take the laws into their hands and try to do all sorts of things. They will outdo even their own political leaders in order to catch the eye of somebody. So you're going to have that kind of situation. But I pray that the law enforcement bodies will be rise up to the occasion and nip these things in the bud.
You cite miscreants. You cite people who are just against, people who just believe they should act against the law all the time.
Exactly.
But there's also the belief that some of these people are actually instigated by certain people to do these things.
Yes.
Who could be behind this?
Well, definitely, you're bound to get people who instigate that kind of situation, and who will do that? I mean, the accusing finger will be pointed against politicians. And if I say politicians, I'm not talking about people who want to get to parliament alone. Okay. Politicians. Ghanaians, when it comes to times like this, all Ghanaians are politicians. And therefore, you are bound to get people who will be pushing people to do certain things. You know, I get disturbed when somebody breaks electoral law and the person is arrested, and the politician goes there to bail that person. Because by their own political party's code of conduct, it is stated clearly that nobody should try and do that kind of thing. You know, that they should not, nobody should even attempt to use extra legal means to get somebody who is being caught on the wrong side of the law out of the situation. We have had situations where some people, I have heard, I haven't seen it, where somebody has broken electoral laws and the person has been arrested, and some important personalities I've heard has gone to the police station wanting to bail such people. It doesn't speak well, and I think we need to put a stop to that. If somebody is caught on the wrong side of the law should take its course, because we believe in the rule of law.
Right. What about the accusation level sometimes at the doorstep of the church, of the clergy, that wading into the partisan arena itself also creates some problems? That some are clearly and manifestly affiliated to some political parties or traditions, and unashamedly say so, sometimes even in the pulpit. But before you as a congregation, made up of people who believe in what you're saying and people who are against it. And that in itself becomes a ground for fomenting the trouble.
To be honest with you, I would not encourage any leader of the church to identify with any political party. Because that has a tendency to divide your congregation. Because in a given congregation, you're bound to have people with different party affiliations in there. And therefore, that's why from the beginning I said we should do national politics, not partisan politics.
Right.
And doing national politics means that one will be objective in terms of the kinds of things that you say.
Okay.
If it's happening on the left side and it's not something that is good,
Right.
please say it.
Okay.
If it's happening on the right and it's not something that is good, please say it. But do so being careful that you do not lend yourself, you do not give room for people to accuse you of being partisan.
Okay.
I would want to say to my brothers and sisters, especially the ministers, to be very, very careful, the clergy, not to identify with any political party. That doesn't mean that they can be apolitical. I am not apolitical.
Okay.
You know, I'm a political animal. Right. So by all means, I'll have my own party. Right. I'll have the person that I would like to vote for. But it is not for me to stand in the pulpit and canvass for vote for my candidate. Okay. It is for me to educate people to love Ghana and to ensure that they do things according to the laws of the land.
What do you make of this phenomenon in Ghana these days where politicians, particularly people running for the highest office of the land, visit churches?
Yes.
In election years,
yes.
in particular. And the president, I mean, as an example, because it was on the news, was at ICGC Adenta sometime in the past week, and I'm sure he will pay a visit somewhere else. I'm sure Nana Akufo-Addo will pay a visit to a place or two.
Yes.
And it happens that they do visit these places and these churches. Sometimes they make donations to the church.
Yes.
And we've heard, I've watched an African election by Jairus Mers, and in it, a pastor says, we will pray for you morning, afternoon, and evening, in thanking him for the donation that he made and all that. And people say that all of these things sometimes can muddy the waters.
Yes.
You know, what's your own thinking on this?
Well, let me tell you something that my brother, the Archbishop Duncan Williams, because I had been asked to speak to them on this question of peace. Of course, you know that I also chair the Peace Council.
Yes.
And when I went there, a similar question was thrown at him. And he says, look, if you're asked to pray, a politician comes to you to say, pray. Pray, God, your will be done.
Okay.
I think we need to have our wits with us. You know, definitely, there's nothing wrong in politicians going to churches to market themselves. If 70% of the people of this nation claim to be Christians, then that's where you're going to get them.
Okay.
But we should listen to all, level playing ground for all of them. I would be inclined to even invite all the political leaders to come to my church and share whatever they have. But I'm not going to identify with any one of them. You can donate the moon. I would simply say, let the people listen and vote according to their conscience. And I think this is the kind of thing that our people need to know. I know that, you know, a lot of people, once they see the politicians, I mean, the president has come to your church, you are so elated.
Right.
And that's sometimes the kinds of things that you say, you do not even weigh it. But I think it is important for us to be very careful about what we say in order not to muddy the waters, as you said, or to create any problem.
As I keep looking at some of the headlines and articles I have, there's one about Catholic Church to mobilize for peaceful elections, civic agenda for smooth political transition, cast for Ghana. It doesn't end there. The National Association of Charismatic and Christian Churches, NACCC, has launched a peace initiative to encourage all Christians to play an active role in helping to ensure peaceful elections. And so the initiative is the Peace Run, meant to commence on the 1st of May through the principal streets of Accra, starting from Tetekwashi Interchange, and then it follows from there and moves on. The initiatives are quite many for the church, all of that. But, Prof, let's come back, but maybe I should say most reverend. Let's come back to it and look at all the accusations leveled at the doorsteps of the churches. And of course, send your messages to 1760 by text. We'll start taking them soon. And Facebook is facebook.com/multi-tvpm express. We'll start taking them. But what about, you've just answered the question about the choices and influencing the electorate and all of that, as to who they should vote for, they should cast their vote and all of that. What then, in helping with peace, Because there are some people who don't get to hear about all these initiatives. All they know is that they go to church on Sunday and then leave. And normally at this time, we get the word. Should preachers, pastors, lay preachers, etc., preach the issue of elections as part of the message on Sunday?
Obviously. I mean, there is nothing wrong in a preacher, a pastor, a local preacher preaching on election. It depends upon what the person is saying about the election. For example, if I'm on the pulpit and I tell people that God has given us choice, an election enables us to exercise that choice in choosing the person we think will be able to lead the nation without pointing to the people that this is the person you must vote for, but simply educating them to try and exercise their franchise without inhibiting other people from doing that. I don't see anything wrong with it. If I mounted the pulpit and then I said to the people, hey, go for candidate A, because he is this, he is that, he is that, but don't go for candidate B, I don't think I'm doing the right thing. I don't think in that pulpit, I'm not doing the right thing because I'm doing partisan politics. So I think we should not use the pulpit to promote partisan politics. That divides the people, that brings about the kinds of things that we do not want to hear, you know, animosities, violence, and so on. But we can use the pulpit to educate church members about how to behave as Christians before, during, and after elections.
So what if somebody was to ask you a direct question in church or say Bible class, and say you are saying that these are the qualities to look out for between A and B, or let's make it more practical, between Professor Mills and Nana Akufo-Addo, the person actually throws that at you and says, who reflects what you are talking about better?
I'm not going to allow myself to be drawn into a situation like that. I'll make it clear to the people that it is not my responsibility to say A or B. I think it is important for all clergymen and leaders of the church, whether lay or clergy, to be aware of that, because it doesn't help this nation. We do not have the responsibility to point people to a particular candidate. We are to point people to what they need to do as citizens of this nation to exercise their franchise according to their conscience.
Our newspaper headlines sometimes can have what I describe as very terrible messages out there. There's one that said, shoot the goons who disrupt registration. And it talks about police upping security at registration centers, and there's that quotation. It's big, front page, headline. What really can the church do about these things?
That's what we're saying, that we need to use very, very temperate language. That I will consider to be intemperate, especially the goons. So I think the media should also be very careful about the way they put out information to the public, because by that information you can incite people to engage in violence. And that is why, as a church, we will continue to advise. And again, a lot of the people who are working in the media, some of them will by all means belong to the church. And I think it is important that in our preaching and in our education, we let our people understand that temperate language, you know, is something that will augur well for us in our elections.
Can you tell me about the Peace Council? Because that's very dear to your heart and your activities. And what is its role, really, relative to the elections? You can give us a general, yes, but
well,
relative to the
let
elections.
me simply tell you that the Peace Council is there for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts. We need to put in place mechanisms that could prevent conflict. But let me say to you that that is a tough order. I mean, it is a very tall order to say that you are putting mechanisms in place that will prevent conflict does not mean that you're not going to have deviance. no matter what kind of mechanisms you put in place, you're bound to have deviants who would not abide by such rules or mechanisms. Okay. And that's the reason why we in the Peace Council support the Political Parties Code of Conduct 2012. Right. Now, this is a Code of Conduct 2012 that is being signed by representatives of all the political parties. Right. Of course, except those that came in recently. Yes. But even they will abide by this. Okay. If you look at what I have here, the signatures of National Democratic Congress, Dr. Kwabena J., Mr. Johnson Esiedun Ketia signed, New Patriotic Party, Mr. Jake Obichebe Lamte, and Mr. Usua Friye, the General Secretary, signed, Convention People's Party, Honorable Samia Nkrumah and Ivor Greenstreet, People's National Convention, they have all signed that they will abide by these rules. And I tell you, if the parties will abide by these rules, we will have no cause to be worried before, during, and after the elections. My only worry is whether or not the party members themselves do know this code.
That was going to be my next question.
And that they have been educated on the code.
That was going to be my next question.
You know.
My next question was going to be, if the chairman and the general secretary sign, and yet once we leave the studio, you and I will encounter gentlemen and ladies who belong to these parties, who perhaps will never in their lifetime interact with these people who have signed these things.
Exactly.
How do they ensure?
Yes.
And how do we ensure? How does the church, which controls 70% of all people claiming to be in terms of Ghana, to be Christians, ensure that this goes down and affects the man on the street?
I think one way to go about this is for the churches to have even this and use it as part of their teaching. This is a Political Parties Code of Conduct 2012, and it affects all Ghanaians. And then also, the National Commission for Civic Education has the responsibility to educate Ghanaians in respect of this code. So whatever they need should be given to them so that people are educated. The political parties themselves should ensure that their followers are educated on this code of conduct that they themselves have agreed on and have signed to abide by. Okay. Because unless our people are taught about what is in here, it becomes merely academic. Okay. You know, for this year, for instance, you know, in the past, they had the code of conduct. And you, Robert, you know, because I mean, you have been with the IEA when they were drawing these things. That's right. This time, they have added enforcement. And they said that political parties shall, in collaboration with the bodies that interested bodies, come up with a body involving the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, the IPAC, at the national, regional, and district levels for the purpose of investigating complaints raised under the present code. So you have an enforcement body, you know, and I'm as the chairman of the Peace Council, I'm the chairman of the enforcement body. Right. Okay. Right. I wish that our people know what is in here, so that we will know what we are enforcing. Unfortunately, a lot of the people down the street who are supporters of various political parties might not even be aware that there is such a code. Right. And even if they are aware, they have not even taken time to read it. And therefore, they go about doing the kinds of things that they shouldn't be doing.
Do you see, you have already said that you think that the tension will simmer down based on this biometric registration exercise you are doing, which is quite new to us.
Yes.
But come December or November into December, do you see the tensions rising again? Do you see violence popping up again?
Obviously, because there's bound to be the campaigns. You know, people are marketing their candidates. And I would wish that we would do civil campaigning. You know, civility, political civility, instead of people simply getting out there and thinking that you are marketing your candidate when you are putting down somebody else, insulting other people. That is how to market your candidate. Right. And this is where we would want to educate our church members to beware of such people. Okay? Right. If people know that it doesn't pay to engage in invectives as part of your political campaigning, it will do Ghana good.
Okay. We're looking at electoral violence and the church, basically asking ourselves how we can arrive at peace for our Ghana and continue on this enviable journey on the democratic exercise that we have embarked upon, for which many countries in Africa and beyond look at us and praise us for. They say that we have had more tension in an election, perhaps in the year 2000 and also in 2008, than 2012 possibly, because 2000, the bridge where President Rawlings bowing out, handing over to his other a political party that was not his, had been in opposition for a long time. We know the kind of battle that was. There had to be a second round and all of that. In 2008, we also saw what happened, how close it was between Nana Akufo-Addo and President Mills. Actually, Nana winning the first round and Professor Mills coming from behind to breast the tape, so to speak, and all that. And that those were so tension-laden that it's surprising that we seem to think that 2012 actually has more at stake than these previous ones, and that if we're able to clear the hurdles, we probably should not rest on our oars, but we should be a little more positive, a little more confident that Ghanaians believe that the results will always prevail. How do you take this?
We should not take anything for granted.
Okay.
There is a lot at stake in 2012. The ruling party would want to have a second term, because, as you know, the first term of Rawlings, he had 2 terms.
Right.
When the NPP came, Kufuor had 2 terms.
Right.
And therefore, they think that that should be the pattern.
Okay.
And therefore, they would by all means do whatever is possible with them to retain power. The NPP would also want to break that.
Okay.
I'm talking about the NDC MPP because these are the 2 major parties. Right. Of course, the other parties would also decide, because you know that whenever there is a tie break, you have kingmakers.
Absolutely.
So they are there as kingmakers, and so they have a part to play. So this is one of the reasons why there is too much tension. Besides, apart from the tensions, inter-party tensions, we have also seen a measure of intra-party tensions.
That's right.
And all of these things will project into the sort of campaigning, the kinds of things that we will do. My prayer is that the intra-party tensions will be dealt with, that there will be peace at home. If you have peace at home, you don't project into the streets. So I'm praying that this will be the case, so that, you know, they will be able to solve their own internal wranglings, and that will not be factored into the sort of campaigning that they will engage in. But I also know that the opposition would also want to say, I mean, if you have a situation where the Nana Akufo-Addo lost with a very slim margin, and so the idea is that, hey, I could have made it.
Okay.
And then consider the number of votes that were spoiled.
Right.
Of course, nobody can predict that the votes that were spoiled were for Party A or Party B or Party C.
That's right.
But if you factor all that into consideration,
It adds up to the debate.
It adds to the debate.
That's
and somebody could sit back and say, I could have won.
Right.
So let me push hard and see whether this is the case.
Right.
I mean, it's all part of the game. But I'm saying that in doing that, Ghana must become first. Let's live and let others live. I think politics is about marketing my political goals for people to buy.
Right.
It is not undermining other people. And it is my prayer that 2012, the kinds of things that we have already seen will simmer down.
Okay.
Because if we carry on with the way things are going, I'm afraid we will be heading towards something that will not be good for us. But it is my wish, and I have the confidence.
Right.
You know, I'm speaking as a Christian, as somebody who believes in God.
Right.
We are praying, we are talking. It's not just prayer, it's prayer and action.
Absolutely.
And I do know that at the end of the day, there will be peace in this country.
Opoku Jackson Michael sends a message, says, peace is good, and I think the churches must still preach on the message of peace. Long live Ghana. We'll move on to our next message. Okay, as soon as you're able to move on to that, I will bring it to you. I think our system is a bit slow, but of course, okay, Pope John Paul, that's your name. Interesting name. He says, I like this topic for tonight. What I would like you and all the other media houses to do is to show us what happened in Libya to all Ghanaians before the elections. Okay, all right, Mr. Pope John Paul, I think that's your name on Facebook. And so we have your message right here. If we can move on to our next one, which I'm trying to do, then we will take a few more messages for you. It's a bit slow tonight, but keep faith with us. As soon as I'm able to get through, I will be bringing your messages. But keep sending them in. 1760 remains a text line. Facebook.com/multi-TV PM Express. And we'll read your messages. Let's move on whilst we wait. I'll take you back to the Peace Council.
Yes.
There's an act of establishing the Peace Council, if I'm right, Act of Parliament, Act 818 or so. And what is the composition actually of the Peace Council, and what is the role of the church in that composition?
Okay, let me read out the composition to you so that at least you know. The governing body of the council is a board consisting of 13 eminent persons as follows.
Okay.
One representative each from the following religious bodies nominated by the bodies concerned.
Okay.
1, Catholic Bishops' Conference. 2, Christian Council. 3, Ghana Pentecostal Council. 4, National Council for Christian and Charismatic Churches. 5, Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission. 6, Al Sunnah Muslims. 7, Tijaniya Muslim groups. 8, Practitioners of African Traditional Religion. B, and then 2 persons nominated by the president, one of whom is a woman, and 1 representative of the National House of Chiefs, and 2 other persons nominated by identifiable groups. So the number is 13 in all, and the president nominates 2 people, one of whom is a woman.
Okay. Now you are chairman.
Yes.
How often do you meet?
The Peace Council has been meeting regularly. You know, as I'm talking right now, we've been meeting almost every month. But since the election is getting closer, we are even meeting, the frequency of our meeting is more than the once in a month thing that we are meeting. It is important to note that since the Peace Council was inaugurated, we are supposed to put in place regional peace councils and district peace councils. We have not been able to do that yet because we're still working on it. I mean, you know, we just got inaugurated. And, you know, getting things together and ensuring that these other important wings of the Peace Council are put in place in the regions and in the districts take some time, you know. So we're working on those things. But the Peace Council is working hard. You know, sometimes something happens and people say, Peace Council should come up and say something.
I've heard that.
The issue is that people think that the Peace Council, it's a group of people who are sitting somewhere daily, deliberating, their full-time workers. No. These are representatives. These are people who are doing their jobs and they've been brought together. So from time to time, we bring them. And when something happens somewhere, it is said in our language that you don't just get up as soon as you hear something without investigating and then come out to the open and say things. And it takes time. It's slow. We wish we will be able to put the regional peace councils in place so that they can take speedy action on some of these things and then inform us so that we can do what we need to do. But we have plans. We're meeting with the political parties on the 18th, for instance. We'll be meeting with the political parties at Dodowa. We're meeting with the media. We're meeting with the security agencies. We don't work under the eye of the camera. Because that's not the way peace efforts work.
Great. The reason I asked you this, I was going to take you to your last bit. You supplied the answer.
Yes.
You actually, I'm sure you know that's where I'm going. So you just dealt with it before I could get there. Absolutely. Because basically, I took you to the Peace Council and its composition, all of that, just to show how representative it is of religious groups, etc., and all that across the length and breadth of the country.
Yes.
And then beyond that, to ask what the efforts are particularly about peace relative to the election.
Yes.
You're now talking about meeting all these groups and all that,
Exactly.
and the political parties.
And then, of course, we're also working with peace-loving organizations in the country. There are people who are going to do peace work.
Okay.
You know, there are individuals who are engaging in other peace, activities. It is the responsibility of the Peace Council to lend support to such people.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are not in a position right now to give financial support, but the moral support we are giving.
Okay.
And all that.
Okay. Kwajo Nkrumah says, hey, Nee, please ask Most Reverend when he's coming to visit us in Düsseldorf, Germany again. You know, we are streaming live around the world. So this is someone watching from Germany.
Well, tell him that when the time comes, he will see me.
When the time comes, he'll see you. All right, okay, all right. So that's your answer there, Kwajo Nkrumah.
Yeah.
When the time comes, you will see him. And as soon as we release him, for now, we need him to preach, and we need him to also ensure peace in our country around here. Still having some difficulty rolling your text messages, but of course, as soon as you're able to do that, we will. But let me ask you this question. Many say that sometimes our Christian leaders forget that we live in a society, so to speak. I mean, the lessons from Jesus in the Bible have to do not just with spiritual growth and all that, and teaching prayer, which is the Lord's Prayer and what it has come to represent and all, but also issues about bread and butter, about feeding 5,000 and then feeding 4,000, about paying taxes and saying that go and get this fish, open his mouth, you see a coin, use it to pay a tax, etc. And that Jesus' example basically to us was that we live in a society of issues, and that we have to pray and all that, but we have to do these living everyday issues.
Yes.
They say that the church doesn't seem to concentrate too much on these everyday issues, and that it's not very ordinary that you go to church on a Sunday and be taught how to put bread and butter on your table, be told how to multiply your streams of income, be told that there even exists something called a Peace Council. You may never hear this in the church. And yet there are people who devote so much of their effort and time to the church that if the church were teaching them the things that the church wants them to know, they will be better informed. And that there seems to be too much of an emphasis on every day reading from some portion of the Bible to teach people and make people scared that you are going to hell, or you are going to, not many will go to heaven, the path is narrow. And at this stage, I am teaching the views I have heard out there and preaching them.
Okay.
Why are we not preaching some of these everyday living issues, like what you're talking about? I'm sure you have educated so many people out there today who are Christians, who probably are even watching the show just because you're on it tonight. And in their process, have been educated about a Peace Council, about the Political Parties Code of Conduct 2012 and what is in it. And that perhaps if this message was carried to the church, that today the basis can be biblical, but then really the tenets can be everyday living. Are we doing enough?
Well, I think, for people who keep on saying the church is not doing this, is not doing that, in a way, yes. But I think they are sometimes also being very, very uncharitable, and perhaps they do not even know their own history. Let me tell you that you talk about the UGCC, people have forgotten the role that the church has played, even in bringing the meetings of the UGCC were held in a church, in the Methodist church.
And by the way, for those who don't know, UGCC is Ghana's first political party. United Gold Coast Convention.
Exactly.
1947.
The role the churches have played in the Ghanaian political landscape cannot be underestimated. When people say the churches are not concerned, talk about formal education. Now, who brought formal education into the country? The churches engage in so many other things, okay? And of course, when you go to many of our churches, they have what they call church and society committees where people are dealing with bread and butter issues. Okay?
Yes.
We have NGOs teaching people about agriculture and many, many other things that are taking place.
All right.
But of course, we also believe that man shall not live by bread alone. Okay. Bread and butter is important, right, but man shall not live by bread alone.
Right.
It means that bread and other things.
Okay, sure.
And therefore we need to keep
the balance.
The balance.
But the question is, why don't we feel the balance from the pulpit?
Yes.
Because this may be happening and affecting somebody who will never come into contact with our Greek extension officers when the church is held.
No, I mean, you go to Trinity and some other seminaries that I know. Courses are taught. I myself, when I was lecturing at Trinity, and I still lecture, I teach church and society issues. And these are some of the things that I teach. And I expect that people who are trained and taught would in turn go and teach other people. You see, sometimes the very people who say this, as soon as they see us getting involved in it, they say, hey, the people are becoming too political. You know, they are becoming political. But that's not the case. That's not the case. It is not just a matter of us becoming political, because we believe that our faith must have something to say about society also.
All right. That's important. Keleku Monica Dela, Hohoi, Volta region. Blame the violence on another's or die be die comment. That is what Monica says. She thinks that is what the violence is to be blamed on. Is that fair comment?
I don't think
the biometric violence.
I think that such statements are the very statements that foment trouble for us. If you're going to be objective, then let us be very careful about the one-sided accusations that we mount against political personalities in this country. Let us be objective and address issues rather than being partisan, because that is what creates problems in our country. Yes, I'm not happy about that statement that was made. But I think we are overplaying that kind of thing. Let's get it behind us and move forward, because we've come this far. And we should not allow such statements, careless statements, coming from us in respect of what some people have said, create that kind of tension.
Eric Beckley, I am very grateful for this program. I hope all Ghanaians are awake and listening. That is Eric from, is it GOSO, G-O-A-S-O? Thank you. Ora Kwamponsa, we have good, talented people with great ideas, but the problem is that what the nation needs to provide to make all these fantastic ideas come into reality. Talk about the bad transportation system, the lack of infrastructure in this country. Our ideas are dying with us. That's what he says. He says that these are the things that we need, and people are brilliant on the matters, and those are the things we should be finding solutions to. Opoku Jackson Michael, okay, I've read your message already. Actually, it was the first message that I read. Thank you very much. And Pope John, I've also read yours. Thank you very much for sending it to us. It came up again. Okay, if I can find some other messages, I think they're rolling, and as soon as they're able to get through, the internet is a bit slow tonight. Pardon us, we will be able to deal with us. But let me find out from you before we go, because we are getting down the stretch of the show. Is Ghana's democracy under threat?
No, I don't think I would say that our democracy is under threat. We've come this far. We cannot go back. We are bound to face challenges, and I would say that these are challenges that we will meet. Even with the biometric, teething problems, teething challenges will be there. But let Ghanaians not lose hope. We've come this far, and I don't think that we will draw back. Let's make the effort to stand and say that, you know, for we have had how many elections
5
now?
already.
5. And we have overcome. There will be challenges. There are bound to be challenges. But I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that because of these things, our democracy is under threat, and that, oh, we're going to go into this and that. Let's talk about the fact that we are even talking about it. The fact that we are even concerned about it. My joy is that, you know, time was whenever there was issues of this nature, is either the Catholic Bishops' Conference or the Christian Council together that will speak. Now all the Christian bodies are speaking. And that to me is a clear sign that we are awake. We want our democracy to work, and it will work.
It will work. We want our democracy to work, and it will work. I'll take a final message. Cassius Clement says, in fact, God has in Jesus' name finished his part. But the issue is, Party A has fully prepared to resist their opponents from cheating them, and so it is for Party B. With these, you and I must be careful and sober. May God save Ghana. That's from Papa Ni Mobile Phones. Sefi. We also thank you for that view.